Welcome to the world of science function. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The cold, sterile air of the intergalactic training station buzzed with quiet tension as a squadron of alien recruits gathered in a semicircle. They were tall, lithe creatures with skin that shimmered faintly under the harsh lighting of the hall. Their elongated limbs moved with uncanny precision as they adjusted their uniforms, each motion betraying an air of superiority. At the center of their attention stood a single, seemingly out-of-place figure, a human recruit named Daniel Carter. Daniel was an ordinary man by human standards, not particularly tall or muscular, but his gaze was steady, and there was a quiet confidence in the way he carried himself. He clutched his standard-issue duffel bag, the insignia of Earth's intergalactic alliance freshly stitched onto his uniform, its threads still taut. Around him, the alien soldiers exchanged glances, their expressions a blend of curiosity and thinly veiled disdain. The humans, after all, were newcomers to the alliance. To these alien veterans, Daniel was a mere curiosity, a fragile anomaly among their ranks. "Are you sure this one isn't lost?" hissed a recruit from the Jartak species, his voice a low, guttural hum. His scales gleamed like polished obsidian, and his eyes, twin slits of green fire, narrowed as he scanned Daniel from head to toe. A ripple of laughter coursed through the group, their alien voices overlapping in a cacophony of tones. Daniel, standing firm, pretended not to hear. His jaw tightened imperceptibly as he adjusted the strap on his shoulder and stared ahead. He wasn't naive, he'd known this was coming. Humans had always been underestimated in the galactic sphere, seen as soft and underdeveloped by their alien counterparts. The history books were full of instances where humans had been dismissed as insignificant, only to surprise everyone with their ingenuity and determination. Daniel wasn't here to make a scene, he was here to prove a point. "Earthlings," another recruit drawled, her voice thick with sarcasm. She belonged to the Quarren race, her translucent skin pulsing faintly as her internal circulatory system lit up with every word. "Always so delicate. Tell me, Earth boy, can your species even handle basic combat training? Or are you here to take notes on how the real soldiers do it?" Daniel finally looked up, meeting her gaze. A small, unreadable smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Guess we'll find out." The Quarren recruit opened her mouth to retort, but before she could, the loud, metallic clang of the main doors echoed through the hall. All heads turned as a towering figure entered the room, Commander Vrex. The alien commander was an imposing sight, his massive, armor-clad frame dwarfing even the tallest recruits. His 6 eyes scanned the group, each glinting with a mix of authority and disapproval. In his clawed hands, he held a device that resembled a clipboard, though its holographic surface shimmered with unreadable alien symbols. "Recruits," Vrex barked, his voice a deep, resonant growl that reverberated through the hall. "Today, we test your strength and adaptability. You will each attempt to lift the Gravitron Forge hammer." At his command, 2 assistants wheeled in a massive, metallic object on an anti-gravity platform. The Forge hammer was a legendary piece of equipment, forged in the heart of a collapsing neutron star. Its weight was said to be immeasurable by human standards, and only the strongest of soldiers had ever managed to lift it. The room erupted in whispers as the recruits turned their attention to the hammer. Its surface gleamed with an otherworldly energy, and the air around it seemed to distort, as though the hammer's immense gravity was bending reality itself. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied it, but he said nothing. "Step forward when your name is called," Commander Vrex ordered. "Show us your worth." One by one, the recruits approached the hammer. The Jartak soldier who had mocked Daniel earlier flexed his claws and grunted as he stepped up to the plate. His muscles bulged, his scales shimmering as he gripped the hammer's handle and pulled with all his might. For a brief moment, the hammer shifted, its base lifting slightly off the platform, but the effort was short-lived. The Jartak let out a frustrated snarl as he released the handle, stepping back with a defeated glare. The Quarren recruit was next. Her translucent body glowed brightly as she concentrated, using her species' natural bioelectric abilities to try and manipulate the hammer's weight. But the forge hammer didn't budge. She stumbled back, panting, and shot Daniel a venomous look, as though blaming him for her failure. The pattern continued. Alien after alien stepped forward, each one trying a different method to lift the hammer, and each one failing spectacularly. The air grew thick with frustration and bruised egos, and the whispers grew louder. Daniel could feel their collective disdain shifting toward him like a spotlight. Finally, Commander Vrex's 6 eyes locked onto Daniel. "Carter," he called, his voice tinged with skepticism. "Your turn." The room fell silent. All eyes were on the human now, the whispers replaced by a tense anticipation. Daniel stepped forward, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. As he approached the forge hammer, he felt its immense presence, like a gravitational force pulling at his very being. But he didn't falter. Daniel set down his duffel bag and rolled his shoulders. He didn't rush. He didn't make a show of it. He simply gripped the handle of the hammer with both hands and paused, as though assessing its weight. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Come on, Earth Boy," the Quarren muttered under her breath, her voice dripping with scorn. "Let's see what you've got." And then, with a single, fluid motion, Daniel lifted the forge hammer off the platform. The room exploded into gasps and exclamations. The hammer, which had been immovable moments ago, now rested in Daniel's hands as though it weighed nothing at all. He turned to face the stunned recruits, his expression calm and composed, though a flicker of amusement danced in his eyes. "Is this what you are all struggling with?" he asked, his voice light and unassuming. The Quarren's jaw dropped, her glowing skin dimming as though she couldn't process what she was seeing. The Jartak recruit's claws flexed reflexively, his disbelief etched into every scale on his face. Even Commander Vrex, who had maintained a stoic demeanor throughout the exercise, looked momentarily taken aback. Daniel set the hammer back down with a gentle thud and turned to Commander Vrex. "Anything else?" he asked, his tone respectful but confident. Vrex studied him for a long moment, his 6 eyes narrowing. "Interesting," he finally said, his deep voice resonating through the hall. "Very interesting." As Daniel stepped back into the ranks, the alien recruits couldn't stop staring. The human had done the impossible, and though none of them would admit it, a sliver of respect had begun to creep into their gazes. For the first time, Daniel felt the weight of their judgment begin to lift, not entirely, but enough to give him a sense of satisfaction. And though the forge hammer now sat untouched on its platform, its presence felt different, as though it had recognized Daniel in some inexplicable way. The recruits exchanged glances, their minds racing with unspoken questions. Daniel, however, wasn't concerned with their thoughts. He had come here to prove a point, and he had succeeded. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that the forge hammer had tested him in ways none of them could understand, and that this was only the beginning. And though the forge hammer now sat untouched on its platform, its presence felt different, as though it had recognized Daniel in some inexplicable way. The recruits exchanged glances, their minds racing with unspoken questions. The murmurs of disbelief still echoed through the training hall as the recruits were dismissed for their next challenge. Daniel could feel the weight of their gazes, a mix of curiosity, resentment, and grudging respect. The forge hammer incident had clearly shaken the group's preconceived notions about humans, but it had also painted a target on his back. Daniel knew that his newfound attention wouldn't make things easier, in fact, it would only make the coming challenges more difficult. The recruits filed into the adjoining simulation chamber, a sprawling space equipped with holographic technology capable of creating hyper-realistic combat scenarios. The walls shimmered as the chamber prepared itself, morphing into a dense alien jungle filled with towering bioluminescent trees and thick, swirling mist. The air grew heavy with the simulated scent of damp earth and strange flora, and the distant sound of alien creatures echoed ominously through the environment. Commander Vrex stood at the front, his imposing frame silhouetted against the glowing foliage. "Today's mission is a test of teamwork, adaptability, and survival," he announced. "You will be divided into squads and tasked with retrieving a beacon from the heart of the jungle. The jungle is teeming with simulated threats, including hostile creatures and environmental hazards. Succeed as a team, or fail as individuals." Dismissed. As the recruits began to form their squads, Daniel noticed the sidelong glances and whispered conversations among the aliens. No one wanted to be paired with the human. He sighed inwardly but kept his expression neutral, refusing to let their judgment rattle him. Eventually, Commander Vrex assigned the squads himself, placing Daniel with 3 recruits who looked less than thrilled at the arrangement: Kraith, the Jartak soldier, Vexia, the Quarren who had mocked him earlier, and a quiet, insectoid recruit named Orvek from the Zinther race. Kraith crossed his arms and scowled. Great. Just what we need, a fragile earthling to slow us down. Let's just get this over with, Vexia muttered, her translucent skin pulsing faintly with irritation. Orvek said nothing, his compound eyes flickering as he adjusted his equipment. Daniel offered a small nod to the group, choosing to focus on the mission rather than their attitudes. He strapped on his gear, a lightweight exosuit designed to enhance human mobility, and checked the display on his wrist communicator. The beacon signal flickered faintly on the holographic map, deep within the jungle's simulated terrain. The squad moved cautiously into the jungle, the vibrant glow of the bioluminescent plants casting eerie shadows across their path. The air was thick with tension, every rustle of leaves or distant growl causing the recruits to tense. Kraith took the lead, his muscular frame pushing through the dense undergrowth, while Vexia and Orvek flanked him. Daniel stayed at the rear, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. It didn't take long for the jungle to show its teeth. As the squad approached a clearing, the ground suddenly gave way beneath Kraith, revealing a hidden pit lined with razor-sharp spikes. Kraith let out a startled roar as he managed to grab onto a vine, his claws digging into the fibrous plant material to keep himself from falling. The squad froze, their training kicking in as they assessed the situation. Don't just stand there, help me! Kraith barked, his voice laced with panic. Daniel was the first to act. He sprinted forward, his exosuit amplifying his movements, and reached out to grab Kraith's arm. Using the suit's enhanced strength, he pulled the Jartak soldier out of the pit with surprising ease. Kraith staggered back onto solid ground, his breathing heavy, and glanced at Daniel with a mixture of relief and embarrassment. Thanks, he muttered begrudgingly. Before Daniel could respond, a piercing screech echoed through the jungle. The squad whipped around to see a pack of simulated predators emerging from the shadows. The creatures were sleek and reptilian, their scales glinting like liquid metal under the bioluminescent light. Their eyes glowed a menacing red, and their movements were unnervingly fast. Defensive formation. Vexia shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. She activated a bioelectric field around her body, crackling arcs of energy forming a protective barrier. Kraith unsheathed a pair of curved blades, his claws flexing as he prepared to fight. Orvek, meanwhile, deployed a small drone from his back, its wings buzzing as it hovered above the group and scanned the predators for weaknesses. Daniel, however, had no specialized alien abilities or weapons. All he had was his human ingenuity and the exosuit's enhancements. The predators circled the squad, their growls growing louder as they prepared to strike. Daniel's mind raced as he analyzed the situation. The creatures were faster and stronger than any of them individually, but their movements suggested a pack mentality. They were coordinated but predictable. We need to break their formation, Daniel said quickly, his voice cutting through the tension. They're working as a pack. If we confuse them, we can take them down one by one. Vexia shot him a skeptical look. And how do you suggest we do that, Earth Boy? Trust me, Daniel said, his tone firm. Just follow my lead. He grabbed a nearby vine and tied it to a sturdy branch, creating a makeshift tripwire. Then he picked up a handful of rocks and hurled them at the predators, deliberately targeting the largest one to draw its attention. The creature snarled and charged at him, its pack following close behind. Now! Daniel shouted. As the lead predator hit the tripwire, it stumbled and fell, causing a chain reaction as the others collided with it. The squad seized the opportunity. Kraith leaped forward, his blades flashing as he took down one of the creatures. Vexia's bioelectric field crackled with lethal energy, incapacitating another. Orvek's drone fired a precision laser, striking a third predator between the eyes. Within moments, the pack was defeated, their simulated bodies dissolving into holographic particles. The squad regrouped, their breaths heavy but victorious. Vexia looked at Daniel, her glowing skin dimming as she regarded him with newfound respect. Not bad, she admitted reluctantly. For a human. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? Kraith grunted in agreement, and even Orvek's compound eyes seemed to flicker with approval. For the first time, the squad felt like a cohesive unit, their earlier tensions melting away as they continued their journey toward the beacon. But the jungle wasn't done testing them yet. As they ventured deeper, the terrain grew more treacherous, and the challenges more complex. A sudden downpour of acid rain forced them to seek shelter under a massive, tree-like organism with thick, umbrella-like leaves. The rain hissed and sizzled as it hit the ground, creating a toxic fog that obscured their vision. "We're running out of time," Vexia said, her voice tight with urgency as she checked the map. "The beacon signal is weakening. If we don't reach it soon, we'll fail the mission." Daniel studied the map, his brow furrowing as he noticed a pattern in the terrain. "There's a shortcut," he said, pointing to a narrow canyon that cut through the jungle. "It's risky, but it'll get us there faster." Kraith hesitated, his instincts warning against the unknown. "And what happens if we get ambushed in there?" "Then we'll handle it," Daniel said confidently. Together. After a moment's deliberation, the squad agreed to take the shortcut. They moved quickly but cautiously, their senses on high alert as they navigated the canyon's twisting path. The walls closed in around them, the oppressive silence broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. As they rounded a corner, the canyon opened up into a small clearing, and there, glowing faintly in the center, was the beacon. Relief washed over the squad, but it was short-lived. A deafening roar shook the air as a massive, holographic predator emerged from the shadows, its form towering over them. "Of course," Kraith muttered, readying his blades. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the beast. "We've come this far," he said firmly. "We're not stopping now." The squad braced themselves for the fight of their lives. The roar of the massive predator echoed through the canyon, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The squad instinctively shifted into a defensive formation, their earlier camaraderie now put to the ultimate test. The beast towered above them, its holographic body shimmering with menacing detail. It resembled a hybrid of a panther and a dragon, with scales that reflected the faint light of the beacon and eyes that burned with simulated fury. The creature lunged forward, its claws raking across the ground as it charged. Daniel barely had time to shout a warning before the squad scattered, each member narrowly avoiding the beast's initial attack. The predator's sheer size and speed made it clear that this was no ordinary simulation. Commander Vrex had saved the most brutal challenge for last. "Stay together," Daniel called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't take it down alone." Kraith, already leaping into action, let out a guttural growl as he swung his blades at the creature's flank. The predator's scales proved to be nearly impenetrable, and the blow glanced off harmlessly, sending a shock wave up Kraith's arms. The Jartak soldier cursed under his breath and rolled away as the beast turned its attention toward him. Vexia activated her bioelectric field, the crackling energy lighting up the canyon as she darted toward the creature's exposed underbelly. Her strike landed, sending a jolt of electricity rippling through the beast's body. It roared in pain, momentarily disoriented, but quickly recovered, swiping at her with its massive tail. Vexia was thrown backward, her shield flickering as she hit the ground. Daniel rushed to her side, helping her to her feet. "You okay?" "I've been better," she muttered, wincing. "That thing's tougher than it looks." Meanwhile, Orvek's drone buzzed overhead, firing precision lasers at the creature's vulnerable joints. The shots distracted the predator, but they weren't enough to cause significant damage. Orvek clicked his mandibles in frustration, his compound eyes scanning the beast for any potential weaknesses. "We need a plan," Kraith growled, dodging another swipe from the predator's claws. "And fast." Daniel's mind raced as he analyzed the situation. The creature was too strong to take down with brute force, and its scales were nearly impervious to their attacks. But it wasn't invincible. Every simulation had a flaw, and he was determined to find it. His eyes flicked to the beacon, still glowing faintly in the clearing behind the predator. The energy it emitted seemed to resonate with the creature, as though it were drawn to the signal. That's when it hit him. The beacon wasn't just the mission objective, it was the key to defeating the beast. "Orvek!" Daniel called out. "Can your drone interface with the beacon?" The Zinther recruit tilted his head, processing the question. "Yes," he replied in his clicking, robotic tone. "But the predator guards it closely. I will need time." "Then we'll buy you that time," Daniel said firmly. He turned to Kraith and Vexia. "We need to keep it distracted. Hit it hard and fast, don't let it focus on Orvek." Kraith grinned, his claws flexing. "Now you're talking." The squad sprang into action. Kraith charged at the predator with reckless abandon, his blades flashing as he aimed for its legs. Vexia flanked it from the other side, her bioelectric field crackling as she delivered calculated strikes to its softer joints. The beast roared in frustration, its attention divided between the two relentless attackers. Meanwhile, Orvek's drone zipped toward the beacon, its tiny appendages extending to interface with the device. The holographic surface of the beacon began to shift and pulse as the drone hacked into its systems, attempting to reroute its energy output. Orvek's compound eyes flickered with concentration, his movements precise and deliberate. Daniel stayed on the move, using his exosuit's enhanced agility to draw the predator's attention whenever it got too close to Orvek. He hurled rocks and debris at the beast, shouting taunts to keep it focused on him. "Come on, big guy. Is that all you've got?" The predator snarled and lunged at him, its massive jaws snapping shut mere inches from his head. Daniel ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the attack. His heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to let fear take hold. He had to trust his team. They were counting on him, just as much as he was counting on them. As the battle raged on, the beacon began to glow brighter, its energy output increasing with every passing second. Orvek's drone worked tirelessly, its wings buzzing as it transmitted data back to its operator. Finally, Orvek's voice clicked through the comms. "The beacon is ready. Redirecting energy now." The beacon pulsed with a blinding light, sending a shock wave of energy through the clearing. The predator froze mid-attack, its body convulsing as the energy overwhelmed its systems. It let out a final, ear-splitting roar before collapsing to the ground, its holographic form disintegrating into pixels. The squad stood in stunned silence, their breaths heavy as they processed what had just happened. The clearing, now eerily quiet, seemed almost peaceful in the aftermath of the battle. The beacon's glow dimmed, its energy stabilized once more. Kraith was the first to break the silence, letting out a triumphant laugh. "Now that's what I call a fight. Not bad, human." Vexia dusted herself off, her translucent skin glowing faintly as she nodded in agreement. "You actually pulled it off," she said, her tone tinged with reluctant admiration. "Guess you're not as useless as I thought." Orvek clicked his mandibles, his drone returning to his side. "Mission success," he said simply, his voice calm and composed. Daniel allowed himself a small smile, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. "We did it," he said, his voice steady. "Together." But before they could celebrate further, Commander Vrex's voice crackled through their comms. "Recruits, return to base immediately. The mission is not over yet." The squad exchanged wary glances, their exhaustion replaced by a renewed sense of urgency. Whatever was coming next, they would face it as a team. The squad trudged back through the simulated jungle, their bodies weary but their minds alert. The holographic terrain around them shifted subtly as they moved, the bioluminescent plants dimming to a soft glow, and the air growing cooler. The beacon's success had given them a fleeting moment of triumph, but Commander Vrex's cryptic orders had cast a shadow over their victory. What else could he possibly throw at them? As they emerged from the dense undergrowth, they found themselves back in the main clearing where the simulation had begun. But something was different now. The atmosphere felt charged, the hum of the station's machinery barely audible beneath the tense silence. A massive, circular platform had risen from the ground at the center of the clearing, its surface covered in intricate alien symbols that pulsed faintly with energy. Standing on the platform was Commander Vrex, his towering form bathed in the eerie light of the symbols. His 6 eyes scanned the approaching squad, his expression as unreadable as ever. Beside him stood 2 other figures, high-ranking officers from different species within the Alliance. Their presence was a rare sight, and it immediately set the recruits on edge. "What now?" Kraith muttered, his claws flexing out of habit. "Haven't we proven ourselves enough?" Daniel said nothing, but his gaze was fixed on the platform. Something about it felt off. The way the symbols pulsed, the faint hum in the air, it was as though the platform itself was alive. "Recruits," Commander Vrex began, his deep voice cutting through the silence. "You have completed the first stage of your training. You have shown strength, adaptability, and resourcefulness. But the true test of a soldier is not their ability to fight, it is their ability to make decisions under pressure." The recruits exchanged uneasy glances. This was no ordinary mission briefing. "The final stage of this simulation will test your unity as a squad," Vrex continued. "Before you stands the core of judgment, an ancient device used to measure the worthiness of warriors. It will present you with a series of challenges designed to test your resolve, your integrity, and your ability to work together. You will succeed or fail as one." Before anyone could protest, the symbols on the platform flared brightly, and a blinding light engulfed the clearing. When it faded, the squad found themselves in a vast, featureless void. The ground beneath their feet was smooth and reflective, like black glass, and the air was heavy with an unnatural stillness. "What is this place?" Vexia asked, her voice unusually subdued. "It's part of the simulation," Daniel said, his tone calm but wary. "Stay focused. This is just another test." As if on cue, the void around them began to shift. Shadows emerged from the darkness, coalescing into humanoid forms. They were identical to the recruits, each one a perfect replica of their own image. The shadow Daniel stepped forward, its blank, featureless face tilting as if to study him. "Great," Kraith grumbled. "Now we have to fight ourselves." The shadows attacked without warning, moving with inhuman speed and precision. The squad barely had time to react as they were forced into combat against their doppelgangers. Kraith's shadow mirrored his every move, their blades clashing in a flurry of sparks. Vexia's bioelectric field lit up the void as she defended herself against her shadow, its strikes perfectly synchronized with hers. Daniel dodged a punch from his shadow, his exosuit amplifying his movements just enough to keep him one step ahead. But it wasn't long before he realized that brute force wouldn't win this fight. The shadows weren't just mimicking their actions, they were anticipating them, adapting to every tactic the recruits used. "We can't beat them like this," Daniel called out, narrowly avoiding another strike. "They're too fast, too perfect. We need to outthink them." "Easier said than done," Kraith shouted, gritting his teeth as his shadow drove him back. Daniel's mind raced as he tried to analyze the situation. The shadows weren't just physical copies, they were psychological ones, reflecting the squad's weaknesses as well as their strengths. And that gave him an idea. "Stop fighting them," he yelled. "Trust me, just stop." The squad hesitated, but one by one, they disengaged from their shadows, backing away cautiously. The shadows paused, their movements growing sluggish and uncertain. It was as though they didn't know how to react without a direct challenge. "They're feeding off our aggression," Daniel explained, breathing hard. "If we don't give them anything to mirror, they lose their advantage." The squad regrouped, standing shoulder to shoulder as the shadows circled them. The doppelgangers faltered, their forms flickering like static on a screen. Finally, they dissolved into nothingness, leaving the void silent once more. "Clever," Vexia admitted, her tone grudgingly respectful. "Maybe you humans aren't so useless after all." Before Daniel could respond, the ground beneath them began to shift again. The recruits were lifted into the air as the void transformed into a massive, labyrinthine maze. The walls shimmered with alien symbols, and the air was filled with a low, ominous hum. "This just keeps getting better," Kraith muttered. The maze presented a series of increasingly complex challenges, puzzles that required teamwork to solve, traps that demanded split-second decisions, and obstacles that tested their physical and mental endurance. Each challenge pushed the squad to their limits, but with every victory, their bond grew stronger. In one section, they faced a massive chasm too wide to cross. Using his exosuit, Daniel created a makeshift bridge by anchoring vines to the walls, allowing the squad to traverse safely. In another, Vexia's bioelectric field was the key to disabling a series of deadly energy barriers. Kraith's brute strength and Orvek's precision were invaluable in overcoming other hurdles. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the heart of the maze. A massive, glowing sphere hovered in the center, its energy pulsing in time with their own heartbeats. Commander Vrex's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have reached the core of judgment. Place your hands upon it, and it will determine your worthiness." The squad hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Then, without a word, Daniel stepped forward and placed his hand on the sphere. One by one, the others followed, their hands glowing as the core absorbed their combined energy. The light grew brighter and brighter until it engulfed them completely. When it faded, they were back in the simulation chamber, standing before Commander Vrex. The core hovered above them, now dim and inert. "You have proven yourselves," Vrex said, his 6 eyes narrowing with approval. "You are no longer recruits. You are soldiers of the Alliance." The squad exchanged weary but triumphant smiles. For the first time, they felt like equals, different species united by a shared purpose. Daniel glanced at the others, his chest swelling with quiet pride. They had faced the impossible and come out stronger for it. And as they left the chamber, the forge hammer gleaming faintly in the distance, Daniel couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of their journey. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories.